Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the People Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I'd like to start by, please note this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Please also note that any remote app participants are muted at the outset of the meeting and are only able to speak with the invitation of the chair. And please raise your virtual hand if you wish to speak, and then only unmute when the chair invites you to make your contribution. As chair, may I ask that you are muted if you do not participate in this way. Thank you all. If we could start by introducing ourselves. I'm Andy Davies. I'm the chair of this meeting and the councillor for St Oswald's. Go around the room, please.
Good morning all. My name is Tanya Miles. I'm the Exec Director at Shropshire Council and I'm the Statutory Director for Adult Social Care and Children's Social Care.
Morning all, my name's Leslie Brown. I'm the Service Manager for the All Age Commissioning Team.
Hello everyone, I'm Faith Jones. I'm the Commissioning Officer within the Ageing Well Commissioning Portfolio.
Good morning, I'm Councillor Ruth Houghton, Councillor for Bishop's Castle and the Portfolio Holder for Social Care.
My name is Roger Evans, Longdon Division Councillor and also the Portfolio Holder for Finance.
Good morning, I'm Vicky Moore, Councillor for Otley and Reebrook, Shrewsbury.
My name is Rhys Gretz and Councillor for Harscott.
Good morning, my name is Terry Trickett and I'm the Councillor for Bayston Hill.
Good morning, Mandy Duncan. I'm Councillor for Sundorne and Old Heath and I'm also Vice Chair of this committee.
Good morning, my name is Thomas Clayton and I'm the Councillor for Sheffield North.
Good morning, I'm Dawn Huseman. I'm the Group Leader for Reform UK and I'm the Councillor for Cleverley and Worfield.
Good morning, I'm Susan Coleman, Councillor for Severn Valley, Conservative.
Hi, I'm Duncan Kerr, Councillor for Oswestry South.
I'm Alan Mosley. I'm the Labour Councillor for Castlefields and Ditherington.
I'm Tom Dodds. I'm the Council's Scrutiny Manager and Statutory Scrutiny Officer.
Shelley Davies, Committee Officer.
Sophie Foster, Overview Scrutiny Officer.
Thank you. And could I invite the councillors online to introduce themselves as well, please?
Go on, Laura. Laura Fisher, Head of Housing Resettlement Independent Living at Shropshire Council.
Morning all, Laura Tyler, Service Director for Commissioning.
That's lovely. Thank you all very much. We'll now move on to item 1 on the agenda. Apologies for absence. I have one for Sean Lyons and also from Carol Morgan. Are there anyone else, please? Thank you. We'll move on to number 2. Disclosure of pecuniary interests. Anyone like to disclose anything before we start a meeting? That's lovely. Thank you very much. We'll now look at the minutes of the meeting held. We'll deal with the 26th of February first. Was there anyone at a meeting on the 26th of February? No, okay. Oh, yes. Thank you, Ruth. And Tanya. There was one little mistake I did notice in the minutes, and it mentions the closure of Bedstones College. I think it's meant to be Bedstone College. So if that could be noted for the minutes, please. Thank you. And I think a few of us were here on the 22nd of May. Someone like to approve the minutes for 22nd of May, please? Oh, Ruth is approval. Do we have a seconder? Thank you. That's great. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to the public question time. We have a question received by Mr. John Palmer in regard to telecom charge and consultation. Good morning, Mr. Palmer. Welcome. Thank you for spending the time to submit your question. If you'd like to proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Has the committee asked an obvious question? Why, under Conservative leadership, 2009 to 1st of May 2025, was Shropshire Council one of very few councils who did not charge for telecare. Financial incompetence?
Thank you very much, Ms. Palmer, for your question. As this is the first meeting of the newly constituted People Overview and Scrutiny Committee, I'd like to begin by reaffirming my commitment to conducting our work in a constructive, inclusive, apolitical manner. Our aim is to focus on learning from the past, understanding the present, and shaping the future in the best interest of the people of Shropshire. The question you've raised relates to the Council's historical approach to telecare services under the previous administration. It's true that during that time, Shropshire Council was among a very small number of authorities which didn't actually charge for the service. But I'd like to point out that today's meeting is regarding the call-in of telecare, and where this issue will be discussed in full in the next couple of hours in a meeting. I welcome open dialogue on this matter from all of us, and I look forward to working collaboratively with all members of the committee and the wider community as we explore the implications for the outcomes of such decisions. So thank you very much, Ms. Palmer, for your question this morning. I received no questions from any members, so we shall move on to item number 6. So that's the appointment of co-optees to the People Overview and Scrutiny Committees. So I wish to confirm the reappointment of 2 diocesan co-opted members, who are Sian Lyons and Carol Morgan.
Yes, and I can just provide an update in terms of the other 2 co-optee vacancies. So there's 2 further vacancies that are able to sit on this committee to be able to support in the decisions in terms of education related items. That are 2 parent governor roles. Both of these are out for advertisement, and that's gone to all of the Shropshire Council local maintained schools to look for registrars of interest, and the aim is that those positions will be filled by the committee's next meeting in October.
Thank you very much for that. We'll now move on to item 7. That's the call-in of the Cabinet decision regarding the telecare charging consultation. And this has come about because on the 11th of June 2025, item 11, telecare charging consultation, has been called in by the Green and Progressive Independents with support from the Labour group. So as a committee, we have now been asked to consider the decision which the Cabinet made on this day. So we'll now proceed on to this item. So the process is going to be this morning. I'll be inviting people of call's decision in. There's Councillor Duncan Kerr, who's leading the call-in in a second to put this case forward. We'll then move on to the committee. If there are any questions or clarification you require to make sure you understand the exact reasons for calling, there'll be an opportunity then to ask that. We'll then move on to the executive director and the portfolio holders and the officers. And once they put the case forward, committee, there'll be opportunities then for us to further ask questions. Is that clear the way we move this forward this morning? Thank you all very much. So at the end of our discussion, there are 3 decisions we are able to make. So the first decision, we can take no further action. The second decision we're able to take, we can refer the matter back to Cabinet with some identified issues for them to reconsider before taking the final decision. And the third option we have this morning is to refer the matter back to the full council for a much wider debate. Are we any questions on those? Are we quite clear about that, everyone? Thank you very much. So we'll now move on to Councillor Kerr.
Thank you very much, Chair, and welcome to everybody to the first meeting of the People Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So I think we've got an awful lot of information and there's been a lot of reports written about this, so there's a lot, I understand, for the committee to get its head around. I thought to make it easier, I would set out the motion and then explain the key summary of what I'm proposing. We are proposing, and then we can go into a discussion. So we ask the committee to uphold the calling and refer the decision back to the Cabinet for reconsideration on the following grounds. So grounds number one is that this is a preventative service, but we have not ascertained the costs in health and financial terms to the council and to the wider health and social care ecosystem of imposing these charges, which we know or we estimate will remove 30% of users from it. So before we take an action that results in people no longer using that service, we need to have some data, some information about what those costs will be in health and social care. And if you just think about the cost of an ambulance going out, they can be quite considerably. In fact, there's some national data which shows a potential 14 billion saving to the country from extending telecare. So you can sort of calculate backwards. If you remove it, there's a potential. So that's number one. Secondly, we have not compare this outcome with the costs and disbenefits of removing other preventative services operated by the same department. Prevention is key, we all know that, and there is a range of preventative services operated in adult services, and so there should be. But what we need to see is where do we get the biggest bang for our buck, if you like. We need to look across all those preventative services and see how successful they are at preventing and what the evidence shows us is the outcome. For example, we offer some financial assistance for cleaning and gardening services to people who don't have a care plan. We should assess, how effective is that at reducing demand for health and social care. It may be more effective, it may be less effective. I don't know, but before we take this decision, we should know that information. So that's the second ground. The third ground is if that exercise did identify this service as having the lowest cost to benefit ratio of any discretionary service, we should then consider alternative options, such as parish councils who may be willing to fund the users in their areas. We've established a charity model in children care services to enable us to go above and beyond our functions for people and children in care. So that's a charity the council's created to enable it, to allow people to contribute to enabling children in care to receive a service above and beyond what we're statutorily entitled to do. This seems to be a similar case where we have people who could receive above and beyond service. Fourthly, decision makers have not been given the unit costs of this system. This is a bit complex, but obviously imagine the telecare system has a huge fixed cost because you need the system and all calls, and then a smaller marginal cost on each user on an existing system comes at quite a low cost. There's an economies of scale. What I don't know, and I don't think decision makers know, is if you impose a charge at this level, who's subsidising who? Are the new users subsidising the current users? Are the current users subsidising the new users? Where's the money going from? We need to have the data on the fixed cost and what we call the marginal cost, like the cost per an extra user. It may be that these extra 2,000 users don't really cost very much at all because you take them off and the fixed costs are so large that the system isn't really greatly affected by it. I don't know. It's just a question. And I think you need to know that before that answer can be given. And then finally, too much, and I think even sole reliance and justification has been placed on what happens elsewhere. Frankly, I don't care what happens elsewhere. I want to make the right decisions for our residents through their elected representatives. If every council doesn't charge or if no council doesn't charge, it's not a relevant criteria to me. What is relevant to me is how successful it is at preventing people getting into medical and social emergencies and using other services. And if we can demonstrate that, that's the grounds on which we should be making our decisions. So just to say, those are the 5 grounds on which I think it should be referred back to the Cabinet for further consideration. I can talk in more detail about them, but I thought I'd just pause there and allow any questions or comments.
Thank you very much for that, Matthew. Looking at the actual call-in, you've identified 5 different areas to review and understand the decision on the actual notes. You mentioned about the committee understand the mechanisms which residents have been assisted by the council. What sort of mechanisms are you referring to there? What mechanisms would you like people to understand? This is point one, review and understand decision. You mentioned about mechanisms.
I think I've made a motion and I'm happy to talk to the motion. I mean, obviously, when we put the call in, we're looking for more additional information. The mechanisms is the process by which the council charges various users. We can go into that. I mean, you've got people in Star Housing who is still the council. Some reference in the report sort of implies Star Housing isn't the council. It is the council. It's just run as a separate organisation, but it is the council. They charge currently for telecare services. They have a different charge. I understand it's not in the report, but I have been told by the users of that service is ending with the digital switchover. And so my first question is, if that service is ending, why aren't we extending our provision by offering them a service? Because they've been told to go privately rather than coming into our service. So there's some questions around that, which is why I meant by mechanisms. But I think, you know, the danger of this issue is huge. It's like a can of worms, isn't it? There's all sorts of things you can follow in all sorts of directions. I think I've set out my 5 reasons why I think it should be referred back. We can talk about other issues, but it's probably less useful for the committee's time.
Are there any questions from any members of the committee? Thank you very much. We'll now move across to Mr. Horton.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Kerr, for...
Sorry, I do apologise. We've had your motion, thank you. Can we have a proposer and a seconder for the motion? Seconder, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Kerr and Councillor Mosley, for that motion. Just for some background, I think we need to recognise that preventative services, they are absolutely critical to maintaining people and remaining at home and safe and well at home. But the other thing we must also recognise is that they are not a free service. The majority of preventative services incur some small charge. And one of the things we have looked at very closely when we first put this paper to Cabinet and now is the mitigations around incurring any additional financial hardship for individuals who are affected by this. And so we have included those mitigations around absolutely ensuring that people who may have to pay a fee in the future are supported to maximise their income and maximise their benefits. We know that there's an underachievement of under assessment of things like attendance allowance and pension credit, for example. That's widely in the public domain. So we do need to do that, and we've set that out very clearly in the response. The other thing I want to say is that with Star Housing, you've raised that, Councillor Kerr, that is a matter for Star Housing, but I would say that whatever their decisions may be, and we're not party to those, it's a matter for their board, but whatever their decisions may be, they are of course eligible and would be welcome to apply for telecare charging from Shropshire Council. The Star service, from my understanding, is that it is only an alarm system, whereas the telecare charging that we're proposing is for an alarm system and other items. So I don't think comparing the two is a fair comparison at this point. So you have been provided with a full set of slides. Officers here have worked very hard to address the call-in points that you made, and we are very happy to take questions against those slides. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Hort, and thank you, Councillor Kerr. I just wanted to just pull that bit closer. Just give an opportunity really to pull out some of the highlights from the information that you've been shared, recognising there's a lot of information there, and just to help really, I guess, understand some of the key challenges and how we've responded to some of those challenges. So just to highlight further to Councillor Horton's response, the mitigations and the aspects of the approach to introduce charging for telecare that respond to the questions raised within the call-in. So a reminder that members of the committee have been provided with the following references. So you've got the Cabinet report from the 11th of June, you've got the slides that respond to each of the call-in points raised, the detailed mitigations paper and the implementation plan as well. And that was originally drafted to meet the October 1st implementation deadline, We know that that's at risk at the moment because of the last 3 weeks since the consideration by Cabinet and working towards today, but I'll talk about that shortly. So some of the highlights. So a reminder that consultation was undertaken with individuals, with their carers and other stakeholders, and that has directly shaped the proposed enhancements to the mitigation strategies and the support pathways described. Some of those aspects include that the council would continue to fund telecare for anyone who, following financial assessment, is deemed unable to meet the charges. And that's consistent with our responsibilities under the Care Act and consistent with our charging policy. We would also continue to fund telecare for recipients of existing council-funded social care packages, individuals entitled to free services under Section 117 of the Mental Health Act, and those who receive free time-limited reablement packages, so that's care after hospital discharge. We also have assigned officers who would conduct risk assessments at an individual level, and they would address any safety or wellbeing concerns and confirm or initiate those charging assessments and those financial assessments, so further mitigation. When required, if a home visit would be needed, we can consider that, and that is another option. And that would help us undertake and strengthen some of the advice and guidance around benefits checks, as has already been mentioned, and allow us to take steps to maximise the individual's entitled income, again to further mitigate some of the charges. We also have a range of support services, including advocacy services that we can refer into to support an individual in specific circumstances, and that risk assessment would enable that. We also have officers who would ensure that the decision, if any decision is taken by an individual to discontinue telecare, that decision is made on a fully informed basis, not driven solely by cost, and that the individual ensures all options are available to them to make that informed decision. So within that scenario, we would ensure that we would provide a follow-up call to anybody who is making a decision to end a service. We are proposing that that is undertaken after 3 months for an individual so that we can assess any risk or any incurred kind of impact for that individual. We know that this aligns with good practice learning from Telford and Wrekin and other authorities in our sub-region where they have implemented similar charges. The learning shared suggests that there may be around 30% of individuals who may choose to stop the service, but we know that that would be for a wide range of reasons. So we know that those reasons could include that noting that the service at the moment is free for everybody, universally free for everybody, even if they have, significant resources and they do have the ability to pay. That service may not be used. It may be switched off and it may be in a drawer, and we know that that does exist. So we may see people cancel the service because of that circumstance, that they actually don't rely on the service and they don't use it. We know that there may be a small proportion of people who choose to end the service, but we would want to explore those risks with them through the actions that I've described. We also know from our data that we have around 300 individuals within those 2,000 who already have a social care support plan and a funded care plan, so they've been through that financial assessment process. So they would not have to pay for telecare charges. They are already in receipt of a funded service and have been through that assessment. But just that reminder to committee that our current service arrangements are not equitable. It's free for everybody, despite the ability of some individuals' ability to pay. And that is not consistent with practice elsewhere. A further mitigation, we mentioned some of this within our information, but to give you a bit more detail, we do have a telecare officer, and his name is Martin Berry, and the work of Martin would further enable us to improve our monitoring, our management of our equipment retrieval, but he would also be part of that support around any high-risk individuals who cancel the telecare service, to undertake things like the home visits and the follow-up calls. And to give that reassurance, he's very experienced and very customer focused. A reminder that the proposed charge is a subsidised rate, and that subsidised rate is £3.45 a week proposed. We know through benchmarking information it's contained within the detailed report that 100% of other councils within the West Midlands sub-region have some type of charges or charging framework in place for telecare. It would leave us as an anomaly if we did not choose to progress this project. And also just reflecting back on the timeline, so our original timelines to implement for the 1st of October, it's already very challenging, and we already have some risk to meet that deadline and that target go live for the charging. So I would ask that members do note this risk as we are trying to build a financially sustainable position for our preventative services like telecare through these arrangements to maintain services for individuals. So just in summary and to round off, we feel that the mitigations outlined are robust, they are aligned with best practice learning, and they are aligned with identified and responding to any of those risks through the calling. Through our telecare officer, we have a means to support anyone identified as high risk, and we would mobilise those improvement actions described. We welcome the discussions today and also want to give assurance that we would also report into Councillor Horton as portfolio holder on a monthly basis if the implementation of the telecare charging progresses, and that would be around implementing the monitoring the implementation plan tasks. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you have any questions so far?
Not a question as such, but it sounds a little like, I mean, I have to say, first of all, I think the report was absolutely excellent that was done. And I really commend the way efforts were made to ensure that everybody who used it was contacted, however which way that happened, by letter or text or whatever. It sounds a little like with prescriptions, that when they put the prescription charges up, everybody throws their hands up in horror, but actually the majority of people don't pay for their prescriptions. So it's not ever as bad as it sounds. It's a little, from what you've outlined here, there's actually quite a large group of people that wouldn't pay these charges anyway. So perhaps, again, it's not as bad as it sounds. I don't know whether I've understood that correctly.
Possibly, that's correct.
Yeah, I think it's been an opportunity today to express and explain that aspect of those who are already in receipt of a social care package of care and have been through that financial assessment. And I think you're right, 300 is a significant proportion of those individuals who are receiving the service at present. And I think those mitigations and the support that we've put in place around our approach within the implementation plan would further support that. And thank you for your reference to the report. I have to pay thanks to my colleague Faith, who's here today, who did majority of the drafting of the report. So thank you, we're grateful for that.
Thank you. Could I just ask, please, one of the concerns of Councillor Kerr was how valid and up to date is the actual information supplied in the report? The actual consultation took place between January and March. And the report, when was the report written? May?
Yeah, because of the lead-in times for cabinet reports, it was probably drafted across April and May in readiness for sign-off.
I may, Chair, this was included in the financial medium-term financial plans as adult social care savings. It was in the pipeline, and so then the election came, so it came through on the first available cabinet meeting. So the information was up to date with the consultation and all the work that's been done through the West Midlands, other local authorities and ADAS.
Thank you. So just to clarify then, when the actual consultation took place between January and March, has the actual report been put together subsequently? Since end of March since May?
Yes, and the consultation feedback is included in the cabinet report.
So thank you. That's quite an awful lot of work to do in a very short period of time, I think. And as we stated, the report was very quantitative. There was a great deal of data breaking down different vulnerable groups, which I thought one of my first questions when I read one of the papers was, what's happening with the vulnerable groups? But when I went into the actual the large lots of blue one, as I keep referring it to myself, is very quantitative with lots of diagrams, and it showed the actual breakdown. The one interesting observation I had was when we looked at people who participated in the survey, the majority of people were above 85. It's just looking at the data analysis chart. And one of the concerns they had was mobility issues. So will that be taken into consideration as well?
There was a full equalities impact assessment included in the Cabinet report, which considered age and disability as protected characteristics. And Councillor Kerr did raise some concerns that they may be impacted at the Cabinet meeting, and the mitigations today outline the actions that will be taken to ensure that those potential people at higher risk would be kept in touch with and contacted. And I think the appointment of a new telecare officer is a really positive step forward to doing that. So a sort of keeping in touch plan with people who are at higher risk due to this charging. It's not a withdrawal of the service, and I think that's important to say. It's a question of charging for a service. If we were withdrawing the service, some of the mitigations would be slightly different, but this service is still going to be available, albeit at a very low subsidised rate.
It's interesting that portfolio holder mentioned that this was in the pipeline before they came into office. And I see Councillor Evans is next door to you, and it's obviously part of the financial package that you've inherited. So the question is obvious. If you hadn't inherited that financial package and that plan, would you be advocating this course of action anyway?
Councillor Mosley, the answer to that I think would be yes, because we are trying to put, well, I'm not thinking, I know it would be yes, because we are trying to put everyone on an equitable footing with neighbouring authorities. And I note Councillor Kerr's point that he doesn't care what happens in local authorities, but it is important to people when they talk and when they have relatives or friends in neighbouring authorities that there's an equitable approach. We are the only authority in the West Midlands not currently charging. Great steps have been taken to mitigate this potential impact of charging, and the rate is a very low subsidised rate.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. Just one comment. Am I right in thinking that actually introducing this will remove the eligibility threshold? So actually potentially the service could then be open to groups of people that currently can't access the service. So there was that question, but actually also another one, and I just wondered whether or not other funding models have been considered. So for example, it seems to me that the NHS have a stake in this if removal of the service for some people increases NHS admissions. Is there potential for partnership with them? Are there charitable organisations, etc., that we might be able to partner with? So sort of two-pronged question.
Yeah, thank you. Just picking up the first point, and I might bring in Faith on this point as well around that eligibility. So our future proposals would allow anyone to approach the council to access telecare and to put telecare in place. And you know, as a universal service, but that charge and that charging assessment and that financial assessment would apply for everyone. It's what happens kind of after that, really, in terms of, so it remains a really strong preventative offer for anybody. I don't know if you have anything to add on the eligibility kind of comment, Faith, around that, having done some of the detail.
Yeah, it's something that we were looking at in the future in terms of the eligibility to open up the service. Sorry, move it forward. Yeah, yeah, it was something that we were looking at really in terms of the development of the service in the future, whether we could open it up further so that it's accessible for more people within Shropshire. We know that there's a significant amount of private telecare or community alarms providers out there who provide similar type services, but generally speaking do are more costly. So yeah, it's something that we want to try and do to make the offer more universal and open to more people.
Yeah, it just seems to me that that would bring more income in, and again provide more opportunity for investment and support for those that are not paying charges as well. So yeah, thank you.
I think that's a helpful point actually in some of the work that we want to do to strengthen our comms approach around this in terms of what's public facing and what's out there, to encourage individuals, families, carers to be aware of telecare as an option to support them and their loved one is part of that approach. Yeah.
Yes, I wanted to say that I think it's really important that this service isn't stopped, and I think the plan is that the service continues. The discussion is whether we charge, and if so, at what level and how. Options might be charging for the installation but not charging for the weekly amount, for example, or something like that. And also the comment that you made about a lot of people being over 85, I wouldn't want people to be misled by that, because it doesn't actually mention very much in the report about the impact on carers. And whilst I don't have a pecuniary interest, I have an interest because my husband died from motor neurone disease 3 years ago, and I nursed him for a year. And if we hadn't had that in place, I would have been housebound while I was looking after him, because I wouldn't have been able to leave him because he couldn't speak and he couldn't move. So if he needed help with something, he could have just pressed the button and somebody would have answered it. So and he was 67, so it isn't just old people. And I think it's important to bear in mind the impact on the carers and the family around, because it's the peace of mind. We never needed to use it, actually, as many people said in this report they didn't need to, but the fact that it's there does make a big difference to people, and I think you need to bear that in mind.
Thank you.
Just address one issue, which is the equitable issue, as whether it's more equitable to charge or not to charge. We're dealing with a service that sits really on the interface between social care and healthcare. And of course, we don't charge anybody for healthcare. You can be the richest person in the country and you'll still get the same NHS care as the poorest person in the country. So in health, there is no equity issue in charges. In social care, we have a mixed model, and some things are chargeable and some things aren't. You can sort of go either way with this service, it seems to me, but the idea is you have to charge for it to be equitable, I think, is a misnomer. I think that's a false statement. You could equally recognise that one of the main beneficiaries, as Councillor Duncan has pointed out, is the health community, and is a health community, they do not charge.
Are there any further questions from?
It's more of a statement. I'm certain that this has been a very difficult decision for the administration. The mitigations that have been identified and will be implemented are comprehensive and endeavour to ensure that those in most need will be protected. Those who already pay for their care and will be subjected to this new charge still receive the benefit of a subsidised rate. The fact that this service can be expanded to other groups and provide the opportunity for those paying much higher private rates, my mother was one of these, can be seen as a significant benefit. No one wants to have to make these decisions, but sometimes they are necessary, and given our current financial position, I do think it is necessary. As long as the impacts are monitored and the mitigations are effective, then I actually support the administration in this move.
Thank you very much for that. I have just one observation regarding I'll come on to you in a second, regarding the charging. It's a very comprehensive breakdown you've actually put into the reports. You've identified the actual cost different local authorities are paying for it. You put Shropshire's as like a weekly amount, and other authorities had like a monthly amount. So perhaps the future reports is to try and get them aligned together. The question I still have is, you've looked at sort of West Midlands. You haven't ventured into the border in Wales. Is there a particular reason for that?
Thank you, Chair. We usually compare against our sort of Shire group or West Midlands group. So I think there's slightly different legislation in Wales. And we did try to get a national picture through the Association of Directors of Adult Social Services, but the information coming back was scant and inconsistent and didn't make a valid point for this.
Yes, it has been considered.
Yes, it has been considered, but we're certainly across the West Midlands where the executive director and senior managers have a lot of contact with other social care organisations.
That's fine. Thank you very much.
Sorry, yeah. I actually asked a two-part question earlier, and one was in relation to whether or not other funding models have been explored. So I talked about voluntary sectors, NHS potentially. So that was one part. Reluctant to ask a two-part question again, so I'll go with that first, if that's all right.
Yeah, so just to add to a couple of the questions just raised, and apologies, I did realise that we hadn't covered your second part of your question. Just to take the question around benchmarking and charges and the inclusion of details within the report, as Councillor Horton said, our West Midlands network area is a really positive kind of benchmarking opportunity. So that's why we work with the West Midlands ADAS network. We did try and build into the report. So Faith did include the costs that Wrexham include as well. So try to, look towards other neighbouring authorities and other authorities that we work with as kind of, statistically similar populations as well, to try and bring that in, and just that reference that Wrexham are charging more than our proposal. I think their proposal is £5.65. Just taking that question around other models and use of voluntary sector and health partners as well. So I think through that benchmarking and that comparison around other models elsewhere, that's where we've determined our model from. That's not to say that we wouldn't work with our really trusted voluntary sector partnership, particularly to identify any high risk individuals, and that's where intelligence comes to us via lots of different means, really, through soft means and also through more formal means around contract management meetings with those voluntary sector partners through the services that we commission with them. And part of the comms approach around this would be to almost like bring them into that approach to support our means to manage and mitigate any risks for individuals as we progress forward.
Thank you. Just one more thing. I suppose, would the administration undertake any kind of review, maybe a 12-month, 24 months review, if this was introduced, to determine cost benefit analysis, whether or not there was net value provided, whether or not the service is having a negative impact on vulnerable groups? Perhaps some comment around that would be helpful.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. I think that's a really helpful suggestion, and I'm sure we can have a look at that, bearing in mind that we've already put in the mitigations that there after 3 months there'll be follow-up calls, but there's no reason why there couldn't be an update in 12 months if you agree it on the forward work programme for this committee.
I supported Councillor Kerr's motion. Not that I particularly support everything that he said, but one thing did stand out that I thought was lacking from an otherwise excellent report is how effective the service is being in preventing extra care being required, preventing additional injuries or getting treatment to a person very quickly that prevents state in the NHS and things like that. And I do think it's worthwhile just spending a little time to look at that, because it's all well and good saying we've got a wonderful system, but we need to know how effective it is in preventing the thing that it's designed to prevent. Now, I don't know if that information is available in other authorities that have been charging for some time and how their transition, but just how many times is the system used and how many individuals partake of it, and what has it actually prevented happening that might have happened if that service hadn't been present. And then we can have a better idea, because we know that a certain proportion are not going to take up the offer, we get a better idea of what the implications of that are.
Thank you. We do have someone online. Laura
Thanks.
Tyler.
Thanks, Chair. Just to come back on a few points, I think, particularly, I think Leslie probably answered most of the questions in relation to other models of support. But I think it's fair to say that even with the voluntary and community sector, you know, there would be a significant cost for them to support and deliver that as well. So it's just looking at how we best ensure, a sustainable model moving forward. Hence why, you know, this has been one of the areas that we focused on. And I just whilst I'm on there, just to come back on a comment around what it's done. I mean, there are loads of reports, or several reports nationally around some of the reviews of telecare. So, for example, in 2020, which I realise is 5 years old, you know, there was a Home Care Insights, which basically showed that 3.4 million was saved in social care costs by a 39% reduction in avoiding additional packages of care for individuals and supporting them at home, and obviously admission avoidance as well. A large report was done by Tunstall in 2020, which showed about 8.6 months of people remaining independent at home. They stayed at home for about 8.6 months longer than they probably ordinarily would have done, which is really significant, not only for them in terms of maintaining independence for the family and themselves, but also costs to social care again. And again, so one of the things that in terms of cost, again, as part of that Tunstall report, which again, it will be higher than that now because that was done in 2020, they're estimating that it was a cost avoidance for about 4,500 per person social care costs. So, you know, it's not only, and I think, you know, just the cost of the care, but I think as another councillor raised, you know, it's that peace of mind for individuals, carers, families and support as well. So it's quite significantly impacted. One of the things about having the telecare officer in place is that we'll be able to do a lot more of the monitoring as well. We haven't had that resource previously. It's something we've recognised, and it's something that we'll be doing moving forward.
Thank you very much for that. Are there any further questions?
Yes. Not a question, but again, I think one of the positive things that comes out of this is that with the financial assessments, if people are undergoing financial assessments because they're deciding not to have the service, and you very thoughtfully put in place, well, don't sort of rush into this, let's look at it before you make that decision, that they may find they're actually eligible for benefits that they don't have at the moment. And we know there are a lot of people like that who either don't want to access benefits because they, you know, their principals don't allow them to or whatever. So it would be a really good way of being able to have proper financial assessments for those people as well.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, I think it's been a very useful debate, and I think if nothing else, we've been able to air some issues around it and have a better understanding of it. I think, from my mind, it is still a fundamental issue that it is a preventative service, but we have not ascertained the impact on those who will lose the service. We've heard some data just recently about the billions of pounds across the country that could be saved by telecare services, but we don't have data on what the impact will be on those who will effectively lose the service. I understand, because they won't contribute to it, but in reality, if that results in more ambulances going out and additional social care needs, it's the community who will pay that cost. And so I'm still of the opinion that this information should have been included in the report and should be known to us, and it might well justify the report. I don't know what that information will reveal, but I think we do need to know that, and I think we need to compare that with the costs and benefits of other preventative services. So the motion seeks to ask the Cabinet to conclude that. Clearly, it's all unfortunate that we're here in May for a process that started in October, but that's not the responsibility of anybody around this table. That's, you know, that's history, and we can't use us as an excuse to not make proper decisions with public money when, I have to say, lives are at stake. That sounds a bit bold. I mean, if you read some of the responses from the public to the consultation, people were saying, I've had to call the ambulance, you know, had to use the care service 5 times. Otherwise, I would have called an ambulance, and that costs of that. I mean, the ambulance is going there, not going somewhere else. You know, it's a serious issue we're faced with. So again, I just ask members of this committee to ask for a reconsideration. I still think it can be done in terms of getting it in by October. We're only just at the start of July. The reconsideration by Cabinet can be in July, and then the decision can be made. So it's not as though this is adding months to the process of to coming to a decision on the matter. But it would ensure that they understand that if, again, a preventative service is going to be reduced or charged for in any way affected, we need some clear data on who uses that service and what the cost benefit analysis is. That enables us to demonstrate to the public that that was the right decision.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members, for your contribution to the debate. There are some really helpful suggestions in this around reviewing. I think this is although I'm not on this committee, I would propose or suggest rather that this is a clear item for review in 12 months. And I think as the emerging data comes, then that should come forward. But I would reiterate that it is not a withdrawal of service, and I'm grateful for members who've also referred to that. It's not a withdrawal of service. It is a charge. It is proposed that there's going to be a charge for this service, but in that process there are some real benefits which members have highlighted around potentially we could be finding people who are very disadvantaged financially and who would benefit from that benefits check. The service is there to support people's independence at home, so it's not a withdrawal, it is still there, albeit with a small charge. So I don't really have anything further to say, but I would like to thank officers for their comprehensive report actually today, and to members for their contributions to discussion.
Are there any other concerns, questions from any members of?
Sorry, me again. It's just come out of what you just said, actually. No mention has been made about how much it's going to cost to create the system to put in these charges. And I'm just thinking a little bit about what ended up being a bit of a mishmash with charging for the green bins when that happened and the stickers didn't stick and various things like that. Have you got a system that you can basically switch on October the 1st, which is already up and running to apply these charges, or are you going to have to create one? And what's the cost going to be in creating that service? Is it going to cost quite a lot to create that charging service, and therefore, you know, it's 6 of one and half a dozen of the other?
So, and apologies that we haven't included that level of detail, I guess, within the report. We currently have the financial assessment team. We have the financial assessment systems and the processes in place, and this would align with our existing systems. So no significant additional cost to mobilise this charge for telecare, because there are a range of other charges that we currently charge for, and it would align with that capacity in those systems. Anything else?
Within the implementation plan, we talked about our communication with affected customers as well, so that we've built in considerable amount of time, 8 weeks, to be able to ensure that we've got enough time to be able to communicate with affected customers, and that would be by letter again, as we did with the consultation.
Thank you. Anything further from anyone? Yeah. Was that Horton?
Thank you, Councillor Morris. This is a very different service, the green bin service. The adult social care team are very used to charging for services. It's a very dynamic, fast-moving service. People come into services, sadly many die because of the age profile, so they're used to very clearly understanding regular finances, financial assessments and charging processes, and those systems are in place to deliver that.
Thank you. So the committee's got a guarantee that the service will be, it'll flow nicely. There'll be no real hitches. There'll be no green bin scenario, and that part's going to move on quite nicely. Thank you. Any further questions, Ru? No. Councillor Evans.
Comment if I can, Chairman. I would like to make some comment just from a finance side, but I understand there were 2 call-ins, so I presume the other call-in you're going to deal with now, because I do want to, but rather than repeat it, I was going to do it at the end when I've heard everything from both call-ins, because it isn't to any one particular call-in, it's to both of them, and it's coming from the finances of the council.
Right, where I was clarify the situation. It looked like it's one call-in with it, and someone else actually supporting the first call-in. So it's just the one call-in we're dealing with today. But I do understand what you mean, because it did look originally like there were 2 call-ins, but the second one's actually supported of the first one.
If I can then, Chairman, if I can sum up the position that I'm in from the finance, which is outside of the papers, but can I say first, compliment the officers for the papers that's there. I've been involved on the other side in call-ins, and the papers that are there and the answers to the questions, I compliment. They are one of the best that I've seen from previous ones when I've been on the other side doing a call-in to provide the information. But if I can say from the council is on a precipice and the ground is crumbling under our feet because the costs are going up, but our income is not staying in proportion. So we do need to look at the services the council produces and see how we can stay out of any situation which would involve the government sending officers in. We need to show a positive output every time. And if those around the table haven't seen them, the P2, period 2 finances were published yesterday. And on an £800 million business, £260 million operational business, the prediction at present is for the end of this financial year, just over 600,000 in the black. We must not go into the red. If we go into the red, there'll be others coming in to run this council on our behalf. And believe me, this is one service they will cut. They will look at and they'll charge, and they'll look, if it goes on, they will look at making a contribution to the council finances. This is still subsidised. It is still there because we care what happens to the residents. If people come in from London or wherever, they will just be looking at the pure finances and saying, how can we keep the council in the black? We're fighting that. We're doing our best for it. So we are where we are with this, and we really, really need this to go in the most passionate, in the most people-friendly way that we possibly can do it, to enable this council to both exist this year and next year. Now, this is the finance side. I've listened to the answers from the officers, and we all care. We're trying to do the best we can, and it will not be cost neutral. It is still subsidised, but it does give the council some income that we need. It's a hard decision, and to pick up the other comment, it's not a decision that I'm a councillor to be. That's what I don't want to do as a councillor, but we do live in a hard world, and this council is there for the benefit of Shropshire, and that's where I'm coming from. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Hall.
Councillor Evans. Could I just refer members of the committee to the summary page in the presentation of the slides of the papers that were shared? I mean, this proposal, bearing in mind all of the comments that Councillor Evans has made, makes this service sustainable. So it is not a withdrawal, it is making this service sustainable. There are some protected individuals there, people who are eligible to free services under Section 117 of the Mental Health Act, existing council-funded social care packages, short-term reablement up to 6 weeks after hospital discharge. Those will continue to be fully funded. The service is subsidised. It makes the service sustainable. There are income generation opportunities if required, but overall it is a fair, equitable, bearing in mind Councillor Kerr's views on that, a fair and equitable approach to delivering a preventative service with mitigations to support people who may be financially disadvantaged.
Thank you very much for that. Are there any further questions?
Just basically like a point forward, really. The way we run motions under the Constitution is that the person moving the motion has the right to sum up. I sort of summed up a few minutes ago, and there's been other contributions. Okay, so I'm not going to make a big scene out of it. It helps if obviously when you go to summing up, that's then the motion is put, because otherwise you have another summing up after the summing up to deal with the conflict later after the summing up. So in that situation, I would just say, I think obviously the council is going to have to make some very, very, very difficult decisions. I think we all know that. Nobody's blind to that over the next few months, maybe over the next few weeks. I don't know. It's a very, very difficult situation. My plea is, though, that we understand and we carefully analyse to make sure those decisions are well understood. And what's missing, I still feel, in this is an understanding of the cost to the wider community and to the council from some people no longer using this service. Whether you call it a cut or a charge, I'm not really too bothered about, but we estimate that 30% of people currently receiving this service will not have the service in the future. And we do not know what the information is in terms of the costs and the health implications of that. And I'm just saying that should have been included. And that's the reason fundamentally for the referral back, and make sure we get that right for this one and for future ones as well. We must understand the consequences of our actions, even though the situation is extraordinarily difficult.
Thank you for that clarity as well. Thank you very much. So it has been a very comprehensive and I think a very thorough debate this morning. I think we've heard very strong arguments across the board. I was very impressed, as stated, by a very comprehensive report, first of all, I've received from the officers. I think the fact is both quantitative and qualitative, and some categorised a lot of vulnerable issues, a lot of vulnerable people. It took lots of those into consideration. I feel quite reassured that the councillors had sort of forethought to think about appointing a telecare officer. I think that is a very positive way forward, because it'll identify any concerns of people not having a service, deciding to drop out of a service. Their needs can be identified fairly sure on, and it might mean in some cases that any unidentified sort of allowances which they've been entitled to might be further identified, as we pointed out, for those people. So I think that's a very, very positive thing. We do care about people, and Shropshire do care, and I think that really shows that it's not just a matter of dropping a service. We are going to do a needs assessment for those people. We are going to be looking at how we can support them further, and to look at anything which needs to be taken. The regular checkups 3 months after, I think, is very forward thinking as well. I think that's very reassuring. So should someone decide not to have a service, it is going to be checked up on. I think that is quite forward thinking as well. That again shows that we do care. I think one of the things which stood out as well was we talked about the funds and how much it's going to cost. One of the motions you mentioned was looking at expanding the service for other people within the community. And I think that's very positive, giving other people the option of actually buying into telecare service and supporting their needs, and looking at how we can promote and develop that within. Excuse me. Do understand that people might still have some concerns, and it's one or two issues. I think the idea of having a 12-month review as suggested, I think is a very sensible forward approach for it. So in 12 months, we can look at some of the issues we've identified today and to see whether some of those have actually come up in the process to make sure we haven't got the green bin effect, as you very wisely point out, something we certainly don't want again, is it, you know? So I think 12 months time we can come back and review our decision. But overall, I feel in support of local authority's decision to actually implement this with immediate effect. So I'd like to propose that motion. Is anyone willing to second it? Oh, sorry. I'll do
You've got a motion on the table, so you have to take that, and you'll vote against it by the sound of it, but that's the way it has to proceed. You've got a motion. So we're voting against your motion? Yeah, for your motion. You can't have two motions. Okay. You can amend it, but I think you just vote against it. By the sound of it. It's fine.
That's my first time, so I do apologise. But second time, we'll know the next time, won't we?
It's the way things are done.
Sure, okay. So coming back to the proposal on the table. Do we have a seconder for the proposal? All those in favour of the proposal, please. 1, 2. All those against the proposal, please. 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And any abstentions, please? Thank you very much for your time this morning. The date of the next meeting will be 10 a.m. on Wednesday, 22nd of October 2025. All meeting closed. Thank you.
Just clarify that it's that first option, there's no action.
As to clarify, it is option 1. There's no further action required by this committee. Just to clarify, thank you.